You know the mic's hot during the intro and
Oh yeah, I
outro.
know. That's the joke. That's the joke.
Mhm.
Just making sure
Hello,
you're
everybody.
aware.
Welcome to Unscripted Gaming. My name is Mike. I'm joined by my co-hosts Josh and Ray.
Hey,
Gentlemen, how are we?
It's always unscripted around here.
That's right.
yeah.
Now you might think you guys are so funny and charming and talented that you must obviously script it. The answer is no. Shut up, bitch. How dare you assume that?
I think there's literally
What the
one
fuck?
episode on the
How
entirety of
dare
our
you?
thing, of the entirety of both our website and podcast that is scripted, and it was me talking about how Tetris is one of the best games ever made for 45 minutes. And that's still there in case you guys want to listen to it. It's okay. Other
Yeah,
than
it is probably up there, right?
yeah,
Tetris is pretty fucking good.
yeah, yeah. Like
Love me some
anyone can
Tetris.
play Tetris. And I mean this about everyone's collective mothers, my own. Your mother can play Tetris. Like, you don't know that your mother could play Tetris, but they could play Tetris.
My mom is good at a lot of things.
Like, she doesn't... I'm not saying competitively. I'm saying, like, get the blocks in the line. Your mother can do that.
Like your mom was once a baby, and babies like to put, oh, square thing go in square hole. Okay, yeah, congratulations. If you're ever a baby, you can play Tetris
It's
because
true.
babies do that. I have firsthand primary sources of this from, the baby we have in our house who does that.
I'm gonna agree with that, yeah. So,
Ahem.
What is this show? Like, what is happening?
we're talking about Tetris. Alright, welcome to Unscripted Tetris. Starring the line block, the realest person to ever grace... No, okay, I'm sorry.
Wow.
We're actually talking
You mean the
about...
Tetra
We're going
Mino.
to talk about which one of the Tetris pieces is queer coded, and you all definitely know exactly which one it is.
It's the Z.
It's the T
It's
piece.
the Z, because it goes both directions.
Absolutely. It's definitely not.
Bam. Got
It's
it.
it's both of them.
Got him.
Yep.
So, we're talking about the merger of Activision, Blizzard, and Microsoft. Actually, merger implies that there's equal power. I apologize. Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. Let me go ahead and correct
Yeah, this is merger implies equal.
No,
This
there's none
is
of that.
a
For a rounded up sum of 69 billion with a B dollars, which is an absurd amount of money because I feel like in every single news podcast related talking about the initial purchase kept saying $69 million and then they'd have to correct themselves. No, it's an absurd amount of money. It's $69 billion.
It is an absurd amount, but looking at the finance records of Activision compared to last year, they made like $8 to $9 billion last year, and
yeah.
that was a decent year for them.
And this getting into kind of like the nitty gritty of it.
Sure.
This deal, I think, has a built-in valuation of Activision at its like record high stock price.
Mm-hmm.
That is is being negotiated for. So basically, with all the recent trouble that we at Activision, which will come up during the course of this conversation, has driven that price down, which is why this is probably even remotely possible in the first place.
Yeah.
I say that, but also,
do we want to talk about like the troubles Activision is in, or do we want to get into speculation town? Which direction do we want to go?
well, I guess we should probably just start with like our general take on it.
Okay.
Because I think I think a limited take on this, or a short-sighted and dumb take that you would hear from other games people is like, Microsoft just won the console war.
That's a bad take.
And that's not entirely incorrect. But also, this is like, we are rapidly accelerating towards a future where there are 5 companies.
So I'm glad you said that.
And things, accumulation of assets and IP, and Activision is not a small company. Activision loves to buy other studios and dissolve them into goo. To join like the Activision hive mind like the Terminator from Terminator 2, but that is all a bunch of game studios that got melted down into QA testers for Call of Duty, which we'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it feels like Activision does a lot of like almost sort of weird acqui-hires where they're bringing in all these studios to then like just put onto the existing cash cow projects because they realize that
right. What's the point of having them make anything else other than like King, like, you know, and the mobile empire that is, or Call of Duty, like.
So I wanted to go ahead and present to you gentlemen with a chart since we're talking about how big the video game industry is. So I've heard this a lot too, that like once they bought Activision, there's only like a handful of companies left. So I'm going to share a chart with you guys. It's going to be in our Discord chat, and it's a very informative chart. And just from personal experience, I have been in the game industry now for this is actually going to be my 10th year. I have never worked with Activision. I have never worked like with Microsoft in that I have been a Microsoft employee or something like that. But I have worked for now 3, depending on who you ask, 4 different studios. And the chart I'm showing is just showing how actually big the video game industry is from like not just in the United States, but across the world. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to say like the Microsoft acquiring Activision is by any means small. I mean, even this past year or 2 ago, Microsoft also acquired Bethesda, which is also
which is a huge, also huge.
But also Microsoft didn't even have a lot to begin with. So we're talking about like Microsoft formerly had Rare and the company that makes Forza. They also had 343. They used to have Bungie a long time ago in a more beautiful timeline, but that ship has sailed. Now they actually have other companies, and their acquisition of Activision, we'll get into, is because they want more studios to start making games. They actually weren't competitive with Sony at their current rate. If you look at the studios that Sony owns, Sony does own Naughty Dog, Insomniac, the people that actually they own whole sections of the game stockpile that From Software makes. No one can make Bloodborne. No one can make Demon Souls. Like those 2 giant games, no one else can touch. Sucker Punch Games, the Gran Turismo franchise, which isn't small at all, and Blue Point Studios, which I know you guys might not know, but that is their champion third-party studio that helps remake and reforge different games. So on and so forth. I think the biggest concern has been the giant in the room that everyone's just kind of turned a blind eye to is Tencent. Tencent owns Epic Games, which makes the most used engine in the video game market, Unreal. I thought that was the bigger conversation.
Yeah.
Don't forget they also own Riot as well.
They do own Riot.
Yes, another huge company.
Yep.
Another giant company, yes. So the big thing I was trying to get at is like, yeah, it's a big get, but I don't know if it's as big as a get as it's probably like not to say like to Mike's point, 1 or 2 people have been saying are saying this is like the second biggest get ever. It's like it's pretty substantial, and it was going to happen because maybe if you guys want to expand upon what you were just saying, but in my personal view, Activision's name is Mud, and it's kind of been Mud for the past 2 years. Like, what else were they going to do? They were just going to trudge along until they eventually became obsolescent, I guess.
Yeah, and part of the reason I think we've waited a week to have this conversation is because there's been a lot of stuff that has come out from the initial reporting and stories and whatnot and statements, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit, but it's also given us a time to formulate an opinion and see how it feels on the tongue, what the mouthfeel of it is, and
that good mouthfeel.
For me, it's a complicated situation because on the one hand, watching this consolidation in video games is not necessarily the best thing in the world. I mean, we're seeing this across the industry, just
across literally everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, a week or 2 before this was announced, Take-Two purchased Zynga for $13 billion, and it's like, oh, that was a pretty good, pretty decent, but also ridiculous merging in the games world. And then this comes out, but also like to Ray's point, Activision, ABK has a lot going on, and I truly do not think that the Bobby Kotick or the leadership there could have or would have ever fixed the culture and the problems going on there, and them being absorbed by Microsoft, who have been very aggressive in their culture and their image curation in the last few years, both on the Xbox side, but just Microsoft in general. If there is one company that could potentially fix what's going on there, it's Microsoft. And at the end of the day, Activision was never going to do it on their own. And heck, even having, regulators coming in and doing something in a few years probably still wouldn't have been enough. So I'm kind of okay with it in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think, I'm not, I think this is just, what am I going to do, obviously? But, like, I think this purchase is a basically after the Disney, we didn't really talk about it that much, but after the Disney Fox merger from 2019, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
Basically, with, any sort of real kind of thorough investigation of any sort of like legitimate antitrust in this country is essentially dead. Now it's, we are off to the races as far as corporate and profit consolidation. And this is just another part of that. I think, it's just, I think to think about this is like, oh, cool, like Call of Duty will be on Game Pass does not convey the full context of what this sort of consolidation will do to, and just what this over time, as everything gets funneled down into one of the 5 companies, and just what that will mean for what voices get out there, what doesn't. I think is deeply concerning. And in particular, I guess, I think it's being sold in a really cynical way too. Like to have Phil Spencer, like the cool gamer guy. He's the cool guy, from the Xbox stuff. To be out there like, oh, I guess we own this random old Activision thing now, huh? And then be like all coy about it. It's just like, shut up, dude. Like you negotiated like a $70 billion purchase of a company. Don't like fucking be cute with me about the, oh look, I own this weird nerdy thing that only you real gamers would know, and just try and like sell it that way as like a rah Xbox thing. It's so gross. Like I hate it.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I see what you're saying, and I think that is definitely one where in the next few years we'll really start to see how some of those things shake out. But like, honestly, the corporate culture of ABK in the last few years, and really in the last decade, has been such an aggressive race to appease shareholders and to trim as much chaff as if it's not, 18x profitable in the last decade of saying like, hey, we've got all these studios that we've acquired and we have basically gutted all of them because they're profitable, but they're not profitable enough because they're not Call of Duty and they're not WoW. So, I do think that Microsoft, in the way that they have positioned Game Pass, the way that they have invested in indie studios, both ones that they have brought in and both, just made deals with and given them more voice. In some ways, I think that yes, there is a possible issue with the consolidation and whatnot, but I also think that there might be more people who get a larger voice in the ABK umbrella under Microsoft because of the shielding from overly ruthless shareholders, because at the end of the day, ABK is where the buck stops. That's who they exclusively answer to. When you're in the Microsoft umbrella, you've got a little more shielding, you get a little more runway, and with as important as Xbox has become to Microsoft, in the pillars of everything that follows under that umbrella, it gives them a little more creative runway to allow some of those people who have been silenced in the last 10 years to have another shot.
If I may, so if I was on, well, let's pretend I don't know how an antitrust lawsuit works. I'm going to get that out of the way. I'm very ignorant to that. But let's say I was on the panel for an antitrust lawsuit. And this is why I showed you guys this chart. If you said, like, should Microsoft buy Activision Blizzard with King? And then you showed me this chart, I'd say, go for it. I don't care. And there's specific reason for that. It's because what did they buy? They bought Call of Duty. They bought Crash Bandicoot. They bought a bunch of games that, let's face it, we all forgot existed, like Overwatch. No one plays Overwatch anymore. I don't know what to tell you, Overwatch fans. You know your game is dying. You're all waiting for part 2, and I hope it comes out and it does well. But there was no movement on like the Blizzard side, and there haven't been for years. The Blizzard name has been dragged through the muck. Let me remind you guys, one of the last games Blizzard released was World of Warcraft 3 Reforged, and the disaster that game was, because it was missing all features, including ranked matches, and all of your custom matches by law belong to Blizzard because they didn't want another Dota 2 existing, which is hilarious.
Nice. Cool.
Right, awesome. And the last game that Activision released was Call of Duty Vanguard, which was their worst-selling Call of Duty game since Call of Duty World at War. Like, this was a company that was on the back foot, and I'm specifically addressing the Mike antitrust thing. Like, I see where you're going with it. Like, there is a lot of, like, the bigger fish are just gobbling up the little fish. But also, Activision was a big fish that was gobbling up and shitting out the little fish. Like, Microsoft does not have a track record of doing that. So going back to Josh's point, the people that just, realize, oh, shit, in 1 year I'm a Microsoft employee, maybe that's a good thing for them, or maybe that's a bad thing for them. Maybe that kind of diverging a little bit, but this might be a segue, or might not, in case you want to take the point a little bit further, Mike. Maybe this actually puts a pause or puts like a bunch of complications into the unionization efforts that's going on at ABK right now.
Yeah, so I think definitely to kind of touch on a couple of things.
Yeah.
I'm not an antitrust expert, but I know for sure that that is Microsoft's history and their ubiquity. As the operating system everybody uses, did not come as an accident. It came as a directive of people like Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer to crush opposition in any means they could, and resist pursuits by the federal government to stop that. So to say that and Microsoft also has shareholders, and it's so basically, like, I think that's something to kind of keep important, because Microsoft has a long history of this kind of that's how they built that's how they built the empire that we now live under. And I'm not even like a big like Linux, free the computer guy, whatever, who cares?
Linux sucks.
But it's just, to say, but like, this is not the first time Microsoft has been to this particular rodeo, I guess, to make that point. But as far as the timing, because there's also, I guess, to kind of the other part of the story here too, is recently a QA studio out of Raven, who is a subsidiary of Activision, mainly their Call of Duty support studio, a couple weeks ago started striking. There's been a strike fund going around that has received quite a few donations, is doing very well. And early, I think basically a couple days after the sale was announced, they announced that they are beginning a drive to form a union and to have it be recognized. Activision obviously did not voluntarily recognize this union because, of course. So that is something that is there's going to be presumably kind of a build up to a sort of union election with Raven Studios over the time while this sale acquisition is being formalized. And the timing, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because even if technically in part of this like acquisition, there could be some sort of restructuring that would coincidentally eliminate Raven or like, oh, you guys don't have a studio anymore. I guess you can't do the union thing you were doing. Oh, darn. Funny how that works out that way. There's a lot of room for that, but also there's a little bit of there's a little bit of heat that could generate that like might cause them to be a little bit more hands off with the the full court press of union crushing that companies have gotten are exceedingly efficient at. So I mean it's bold timing. I mean, I think that's smart. That's the kind of thing you have to do to win these fights when the deck is very, very much stacked against you. And I guess kind of the final thing I want to say to that is, again, Microsoft also has a history of union busting within their studios. So I don't think they would necessarily, love inheriting this little union shop that gives the other people in Microsoft ideas. So it will be interesting to kind of watch what happens here. I guess if there's any sensitivity to, PR, it depending on, what kind of heat or attention this gets from the federal government, a presumably kind of liberal one might not look so kindly on pretty explicit union crushing. The labor secretary is a kind of pro-union guy. It is not the worst guy in the cabinet. I think labor generally likes him. So it will be interesting to see if this garners any kind of attention and changes how the federal government, based on how this union situation is handled, if that ends up drawing the kind of the Sauron's eye of federal regulation or a possible ruling here. But I guess on that, Disney Fox happened. So if that happened, that's probably more egregious on its face than anything that is really happening here.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say, and I union busting and preventing issues aside, like even in a moderately liberal, not overly aggressive regulatory climate, I think that this merger goes through without a hitch for the most part. Like, there are less clear and obvious harms to competition and consumers and the industry. Not to say that there aren't some and there aren't the potential for some, but like, it is different than even like the current NVIDIA ARM merger, which sounds like it's actually gonna get scuttled because it's too big and it's not gonna get through some of those international regulatory. That's been going around recently, that the ARM acquisition is off, and I think that NVIDIA is gonna also have to pay like $1.5 billion in like breakup fees to like because it didn't go through, and they which is
I think
hilarious.
this negotiation has like a $3 billion like cancellation price that Microsoft is on the tag for. And just to kind of, I think this is another good point that you brought up, Josh. I think like as far as the anti-competition or anti-competitive angle that would kind of be used by a regulator here, I looked at these numbers earlier just to double check, because I think in a lot of gamers' minds, like Microsoft's big competition, that's Sony, right? Sony has a market cap of $136.38 billion. Microsoft's is $2.224 trillion. So it's clear that, to the extent that Microsoft is competing with Sony, it's like it's play money to them. Like it's just Microsoft is not interested in I don't think to think that Sony is this huge titan fighting against Microsoft is not really an accurate assessment anymore. Just because so much Microsoft is interested in angling out Facebook, Amazon, and Google. If you're not one of those three companies, Microsoft could give a shit. That's just not who they are focusing the kind of long-term angling and strategy around trying to build and own the future.
I think you bring up a good point that there are some people that are so inside their own gaming bubble. Well, not sometimes, they probably don't even know or care to know that the gaming division of Microsoft is one of the smallest divisions in Microsoft.
Yeah.
It is, as you said, it is quite literally their toy department they have off to the side, that when the Xbox 360 was failing, they casually threw several $billions at that department just to go ahead and say, yeah, fix the red ring issue. Other companies can't do that. They can't just... Nintendo refuses to fix the Joy-Con drift. Microsoft said, mail us your Xbox 360 and we'll refurbish it or send you a new one. That's the kind of fuck you money we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good point. That and also console wars. I mean, come on. Some of the people that spout that, guys, we're older millennials now. We have homes, we have families, we have mortgages.
We have real wars.
Yeah, we look at the news and we get depressed. We don't look at the news and say, "Oh, look what Kanye's doing. Isn't that so wacky?" It's like, please, Kanye, go away.
I mean, that is kind of wacky, but we don't have to talk about that.
No, but to that point, Microsoft doesn't care, as you were saying. Nintendo doesn't care what Microsoft does. Sony doesn't care what Nintendo does. These are all giant conglomerates that are in their own space and bubble, and they're we are successful enough that as long as we keep having developers release at least halfway decent games, and I'm not talking 8 out of 10s, I'm talking 7 out of 10s consistently being pumped out year after year, we're gonna be fine.
Yeah, I think if there was not a formal I think we need to probably put a stake in the heart of any sort of console war discussion.
Oh man,
if that hasn't already died, Microsoft and Phil have said that they will, presume to honor any sort of currently arranged agreements. Or, I think Phil said he would love to keep Call of Duty games where they are right now, which is very very cheeky language. I think it's pretty funny because it's I would love to do that.
Well, it says, hey, we're gonna do it for now. We'll see what happens because times
there's a
change.
big but in there.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, some people and obviously some of that came out, in the first few days after the initial merger, because everybody's like, oh my God, they're gonna pull Call of Duty from PlayStation and yada yada, and it's oh, PlayStation to game, maybe PlayStation will get Game Pass. No, calm the fuck down. Call of Duty is not going anywhere because yes, Call of Duty will go to Game Pass, and Microsoft doesn't have to pull Call of Duty off of PlayStation to just be hey, look, it's over here on Game Pass, to make it look appealing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't do that in the middle of a console generation as a sales tactic. You do that around the launch of a new console when you really want to dig the boot in and say yo, don't buy the PS6, buy the Xbox Series 1S X Scorpion because it's got the Call of Duty on Game Pass.
Yeah, and then that's kind of where because that's kind of where the angle of this, the truly anti-competitive part of it comes in, because Microsoft controls the price of Game Pass, right? So they could, that's something that they can, squeeze on people, they can get people into Game Pass, and then they are kind of, you kind of have a captive audience there. They can all of this, there's like, it's kind of like how the thing that kind of comes to my mind is how how Amazon has like the Amazon Basics like line of products, and how those are, they kind of buy those and then drive the price down of everything else.
Yeah.
Like that's what and in a way that like no one could, like Amazon has the capacity to turn a profit on that, but no one else can, and that like there's like a predatory pricing there. I think that's what that is kind of called. I'll have to double check. I'm not a business major. Shut up. But that's kind of what I think, I don't think it's a huge stretch to say that that is basically what Game Pass will be used as in, 5 years from now. That seems like a very logical thing to me. It's like, if they like, I don't know if they just, bake it into the price of the new Xbox, or they just keep that price like super, super, super low or something, like way lower than it, like, if it's a steal for the consumer, then then there's like, hey, there's no problem here. It's still cheap games for everybody.
See, I'm actually of the other opinion. I think that the price of Game Pass will creep up here, pretty soon, and I
once
think,
it's been once any sort of like alternative has been thoroughly
yes. Now I don't think
eliminated.
I don't think it'll be as quick or as steep as a Netflix or a Hulu have been over the last few years, mostly because Netflix and Hulu cannot monetize you after your monthly subscription, but like Game Pass you can, because you've got microtransactions in all those games. So like, yes, you can get a game for free, but like you can go and buy the DLC, you can go do all these other things. Plus, at some point you're going to have so many people on there that you're going to want to make sure that the studios that you're paying out are getting reasonable cuts, and you are able to continue to entice new people onto that platform. Because even when you have an endless library, if you're not getting what's new, if you're not getting something exciting, what's in the discourse at that time, it's a service that is just as easy to cancel. Because while some people like Ray are like, oh, I have to have this thing because I might want to play it 10 years from now at the drop of a hat, and I need that ability. Other people are like, I played it once, I will never ever think about it again, and that is okay with me.
I do that with some games, that kind of like, if this game was to die on the server, that's okay. Destiny 2. But there are some games where I go out of my way to go. What? Just calling it like it is. There are some games where I go out of my way to go get the physical media of. So I just went to my local gaming store called Live Action Games here in Champaign. Go visit them. It's run by like 1 or 2 guys, and they're great. They're funny and they're jerks, but I love them. They're good people. Adrian's a good guy. And I picked up Ace Combat 4 for the PS2. I legitimately went looking around. Where can I get Ace Combat 4? Can't get it on the PS Now store. Can't get it on the Xbox Game Pass. Sorry, gotta get physical media. I also wanted to say, I know Josh had to step away, but it lets me sleep at night to know that probably the next console is going to be called the PlayStation 6. That lets me sleep easier to know it's not going to be some weird bullshit name like the whatever Xbox thing is. All right, I'm sorry. Back on topic.
I actually want to mention something real quick. I'm posting a link to an article in the New Yorker from October by Parul Segal, called "Is Amazon Changing the Novel?" And in this article, they go through, and look at how Amazon storefront, which has, through Kindle and just, Amazon started as a bookseller. That is where that started. And with how ubiquitous the Kindle and the e-reader publication has become, and how Amazon, and how valuable that real estate of, being on the Kindle homepage, being the #1 Amazon bestseller, how that has begun to change how people write books. And that's kind of something I hope people think about when they see these kinds of acquisitions happen. It's like it snuffs out any sort of oxygen for anything outside of this ecosystem. And people will, people write novels are now write novels. Like they are incentivized to, it changes the way people write books because they know what kind of things will get rated highly by readers, and that gets them more downloads, that gets them on the #1 page on Amazon. It's like how, I mean, and just that, it's these systems push and pull on each other. There's no way that these kind of acquisitions and mergers won't change the things that are shown, that you play, things you see, the things you listen to. All of these things create an environment that incentivizes certain kind of behavior, thought, and just presentation. Things that don't squarely fit into what brings our studio or myself, more attention, more like it just, those environments are going to push on to what sort of content is encouraged and what sort of things are not. And, and that's just something that we are going to have to, that we now live with. And so that's kind of, I think that's just something we should think about in terms of like what it means when, I mean, just like what it means when, I mean, it's like how with Disney Fox, like how it's just kind of creates further, like that kind of merger just gives Disney even more power over the limited space that is like the box office and the movie theater, where all of a sudden, the only movies that come out and that, get made and get public and like get the big release, get the time in movie theaters are, your cape stuff that is going to have a humongous return. And then other movies are just, everything is going to get punted to streaming and doesn't get the recognition it deserves, doesn't even get, we never hear from those voices in the same way that we did before, because there's simply no room in the like just the AAA mega blockbuster has just overtaken everything, and it just sucks all the oxygen out. So
I think you're talking about this from the perspective, if I may, real quick, Josh, in that like the growing public still cares about going to the theater for like movies that I like that term, cape stuff. I'm gonna use that from now on for superhero movies, cape movies. The growing public still cares to go to the theater for cape movies. I know you hate me for saying this, but if people just started releasing more stuff to streaming, good. And because I like a lot of the stuff that comes to streaming. I don't. There are very few movies I'd rather go see in the theater. The only times I've gone to the theater, like obviously coronavirus notwithstanding, has been a movie I've legitimately wanted the theater experience for, and I think you're obviously aware of that. That has lately been Dune, and that was really good. I saw Spider-Man just because people can't be trusted on social media not to do spoilers. They just can't. So I'm like, let me get this over with, because I actually legitimately like Spider-Man as a character, and see if I can watch that. But they released the Matrix Resurrections to streaming, straight to streaming. Boom, day one. I went ahead, bought HBO Max, canceled it that very same night, just so it doesn't charge me the next month. Watched it for 3 hours, and then jobs are good. That's fine. That's okay. I'm okay with that world living in, because they still get the sale. You got my $15. Congrats. And I can consume the content. I have my opinion on it, and whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. I have my opinion on it. And hopefully the actors got paid, and not just the actors, everyone that put that movie together got paid a reasonable rate. It sounds like a win-win for everybody. Now, is it dystopian that, like, say certain things may die by the wayside? That depends on how you view it, because there's been a lot of really good things that are independent that I've watched in this example via streaming. There have been a lot of games I've actually, my personal, this is just, I realize this is anecdotal with me, but grab my hand and walk with me down this road. There's a lot of other games that you can play via Steam, via Nintendo Switch, especially Nintendo Switch, that are fully independent made and funded, and all they're asking for is a couple of your dollars. And that has been a bold new world. They don't have to ask and bend the knee and beg for publishing rights nearly as much as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name of the movie. I think it's called Indie Dev or Independent Dev. The one with Phil Fish that was on Netflix for a long time, talking about how hard it was to make the game Fez. We don't have that anymore. Not really. You could just walk up to Steam and say, people are interested in my game. Can I sell it on your marketplace? Fine. You don't want Steam? Go to itch.io. Boom. Nintendo has actually been super lax. Like, there is legitimate shovelware, just bullshit on the Nintendo
Oh yeah,
shop.
it's not
You
good.
can find straight up garbage on that shit now.
You can find Wordle with like and it downloads as like a executable for a crypto miner or something. You're like, oh, I
oh my,
got Wordle on the Switch. You're like, did
I don't
you?
Fuck
want to.
yeah, let's go.
I don't want to get into the fact that Nintendo Switch software has been the most easily pregnable for crypto miner jerkbags. It's actually kind of an issue that they need to investigate. But that's neither here nor there. The point I'm getting at is that I get what you're saying, that a lot of bigger voices won't have like as much billboard space or as much like advertising space as before. But no one's gonna turn down like a film by, say, like Martin Scorsese or something like that because he didn't publish it through Disney. They're gonna be like, Scorsese, my boy. They go ahead, give him a little backslide, bring it on in, and boom, movie's on the screen.
Yeah. Well, I guess like more. I think you're not wrong, but I think more the point is just that, you know, these corporate mergers and like, you know, oh, like, oh, this is cool, like Crash Bandicoot gets to be in Microsoft Smash Bros. Now, like
Couldn't
like
before.
everything that you know being put in this context is not good, and the way that they incentive and how they like manage and incentivize these systems will actively change the medium, like the media ultimately that is being consumed. I think largely for the worse. I mean, that might just be my cynical take,
I
but
think
I
it's
think that is
a
the
little,
measurable thing.
I think it's a little overly cynical because we live in the time where there have never been more gamers and there have never been more games. There are an endless number of Steam releases every single day to an overwhelming degree. Even on Game Pass already, there's an overwhelming and endless number of possibilities on there and things that you will never ever be able to get through because there just aren't enough hours in a lifetime to consume all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that there's not going to be some, you know, pressure that is put on people because of some consolidation or Activision being purchased by Microsoft, but I also think that there are so many voices out there and there are so many people making so many different things that it is still, while some consolidation happening, there is a lot of decentralization that is still going on, and voices that'll be, you know, stories that'll be told, people who will, you know, come out of nowhere. I mean, for God's sake, Microsoft invested in a single dude and got him Daisy Ridley, Willem Dafoe, and James what's his nuts to voice act a game that was in development hell for 8 years, and you know, it came out and everybody was real fucking hyped about it, and it was okay. So
it was a solid 5 out of 10, Josh says.
But like, you know what? They saw something with potential. They put money behind it. They helped this guy get a bitchin' voice cast, and he just couldn't quite execute on it. So like, I'm not saying your concerns are invalid. I don't think that this particular instance is as dystopian, you know, consolidation of media into one gray blob as other media might be.
I wanted to bring like a grounding point. You guys remember, like, in terms of game history, when like Nintendo was like the only game in town and you had to answer to every single one of Nintendo's standards?
The tyrannical rule
Yo,
of
if you
the
did not
seal
have
of
that
quality.
Nintendo seal of quality, you could fuck the hell off forever.
That's exactly right. And they gave that seal of approval to like anyone that gave them enough money sometimes. I mean, as an example, when it comes to game approval process, Cyberpunk 2077 on the PS4. There was just dollars that changed hands. They're like, yeah, whatever, you'll probably fix it, or you won't. We'll get ours. It's cool. But the point I'm trying to bring at is I don't think we're ever going to see that again, because how many games do we play lately where it has its own completely separate launcher? Like, the company I used to work for, I haven't worked there in years, Wargaming. They have and still have their own completely separate launcher to play any one of their like 6 games that they are publishing right now. And they're not the only one. Bethesda does that. Granted, they just got bought by Microsoft. Rockstar does that. Granted, they're under the Take-Two umbrella. But what I'm trying to get at is it doesn't take much for a big enough studio to say, like, we actually don't need anyone. We're just going to be private for a while. Unless someone makes us an offer we can't refuse. To Mike's point earlier, if you don't mind, speaking of offer they can't refuse, Activision is still being sued by the state of California. Let that still be out there. We had like one angry commenter on one of our YouTube videos that was so pissed that we brought up that Activision was being sued by I don't know if you guys know, we don't get a lot of views on our YouTube stuff. Usually our Spotify and SoundCloud is where all of our people listen to our stuff, which by the way, love you guys. But our YouTube, it's just there for like basically posterity anymore because of the YouTube adpocalypse that really...
Bobby Kotick found our YouTube page.
Yep.
Yeah, Bobby Kotick went ahead and made a sock puppet account, and he's like, "How dare!" But anyways, the point I'm getting at is they're still being sued. People, myself included, and like 10 other developers I know, are turning down working at Activision because they're like, "Why the F would I ever want to work for your company? You don't treat your workers well." How much has that decreased their quality in games, in their production? How much did Microsoft walk up to the table and say, like, you guys are done in 10 years. We're going to buy you because there's nothing else you're going to do. What are you going to do? Make Overwatch 2? Ooh, we'll just release another Halo game and beat you out the water. How about that? How much? What I'm basically saying is, how much did Phil Spencer unzip it and slap it on the table and say, like, what are you going to do about it? And
Phil Spencer said, "Fuck my family this Christmas. I know what I want for Christmas, and I'm gonna get it."
Kind of, yeah, because I know I said this in our unscripted gaming chat, like $69 billion is a lot, but considering the property that Activision has under their umbrella, that's a steal. They can get a guaranteed $7 million every single year like clockwork, as long as they release a working Call of Duty game. They're not even good. Just you push the button and the disc goes in and it works. That's it. $7 billion, bam, on the table, delivered.
Honestly, I really hope that they, eventually get away from the yearly release of Call of Duty and, do something.
I wanted to.
They will. Okay, they will not do that, but it will just be seasonal updates of Warzone forever.
I do.
Sounds great to me.
Back to the union thing. Driving your workers into the ground. I do think that, I'm surprised Mike didn't go full conspiracy Mike mode, because I was ready for it. Because I agree with you, is what I'm getting at.
Do I have permission to do this?
I mean, by all means.
No, okay.
The conspiracy of that is the timing isn't that it's almost too close. No, it's right on. It's Microsoft being the leopard in the bush, striking while that antelope is catching a drink of water. You know what I mean? They are in such a weakened state because they're already one of the major... It's already happened with Raven Software, which, by the way, power to Raven Software. I hope you guys get everything you want and more. And if everything you want includes firing Bobby Kotick...
Solidarity, bitches. Let's go.
Damn straight. They are the first major AAA gaming publishing arm to have a union under their arm. That dam has been broken. It's gonna keep happening, and Activision has no one but themselves to blame for it because they work those people to death working on Warzone, and no one wants to work themselves to death working on, of all video games, Warzone, let alone any video game. So
yeah, I chimed in and I was going to say something, but what was it? I forget. Yes. So I think that, I mean, the kind of the moray of all of these stories, there's probably, I feel like there's probably some other things floating around that we haven't heard about. Bobby Kodak's name is in Jeffrey Epstein's black book. That doesn't mean anything, Bill Clinton's in there, so is Donald Trump.
I mean,
Who could say what that means? But
Bobby
he's
K
in
is
there.
getting a payday, though. We can tell you that much.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be rich as fuck.
He's
He already is. He's gonna be great.
I want to interject here. He's already rich as fuck.
He's gonna be very cash
Ray,
money.
what if he was even richer as fucker?
I want to go ahead because I did the math earlier because someone asked me about this. Like, oh, doesn't it suck? He's getting a golden parachute. Let's say he walks away with $300 million.
He's gonna get a golden fucking Death Star. Parachute is not even describe it.
But here's the other devil's advocate too. Even if, let's say, Papa Regulator came down and threw the ban hammer at ABK and dissolved them.
They can just
Bobby
sell it
Kotick
off.
was still gonna get a golden parachute because that's just how corporate culture works. Even without the purchase of Microsoft and the absolute destruction of ABK, which would, also remember would create the elimination of thousands of jobs for people, he would still be fine and get payouts of millions to billions of dollars because that's how corporate works.
Josh, I wanted to point this out, and I was getting to how much I don't care about Bobby Kodak's future incoming golden parachute. The man has so much money that let's say either one of us was working a job and we were making $30K a year. I think it's 300 million he'll probably make as a golden parachute. His 300 million golden parachute is you being let go from your job and getting $30. That's how much money he is worth right now. It means nothing. It doesn't mean he's already won. He's won again and again and again. The golden parachute, you can be mad about it, but it's we should have been mad before then.
Yeah, it's just people are like, Bobby Kotick sucks. It's like, Bobby, yeah, he does suck, but he's very good at his job, which is making fucking shit tons of money for shareholders. That is his only job, and he's very good at that until this past year, and then he pulled the go private and get bought lever, and that's what you do. That's how it works.
Did they go private? Is that?
Well, not go private, but they're being brought into Microsoft.
Okay, yeah.
That was sorry. But I don't know if I really have much else to say. Again, solidarity to Raven. Best of luck in your efforts. Batten down the hatches. It's going to be rough.
Oh, should we get into the Activision saying that they have not formally recognized Raven?
Yeah, so they're going to have to do an election.
Yeah, and being that they already have the vast majority of QA testers. Oh yeah, the effed up thing I wanted to talk about. Activision saying, well, what if we move all these QA testers to different departments and call them something else? All right. Listen, Activision. I know that you guys say in your former letter that we support unions, but this is straight anti-union busting bullshit. It's so obvious.
Yeah, exactly. It's very they are gonna throw the hammer at and assuming that even this isn't concluded when the sale or when the kind of the sale happens to Microsoft will happily continue with ensuring that this does not go through or goes the company way. That is what these companies do.
It could go through before Microsoft actually buys, at least for Raven.
Yeah.
ABK,
we don't know how it's a process. It'll take time.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that this union drive will probably be settled before the sale happens, just because these sales are very complicated. Union drives are also complicated.
Yeah,
but they're not very complicated.
I think the sale is slated to close sometime next year. So
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot to go through between now and then.
A lot of my people have to talk to a lot of their people.
The union one should be a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean that'll probably be a couple of months. I
hope ABK forms their own union or they join the Game Workers Coalition, because man, how badass would be if Microsoft accidentally bought a formerly unionized entire branch, and they just have to deal with that from now until forever, or until they can't legally fire them for being in the union,
or until Raven is reorganized or dissolved or whatever. Yeah, one of the usual tricks, right?
You mentioned something. The person in charge of the labor department actually being like pretty pro union. To that point, like this past spring, back in March of 2021, Elon Musk was slapped down for firing a person that was trying to formally unionize Tesla. So the federal government still has teeth in this regard.
Yeah.
It
Marty Walsh is his name for reference.
Yeah. Base Marty Walsh. We stand the king, Marty.
Marty Walsh.
Keep doing what you're doing. All right.
So I guess like kind of my, closing thoughts here. I feel like we've got covered most of the news aspect of it. I mean, this happened. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. I mean, maybe the Activision employees. I guess that's kind of the one last thing we don't really know about. I'd be curious to see what a lot of Activision Blizzard employees think. I think they are probably ready for a corporate cultural reset, and I hope that they can, in being restructured under Microsoft, they can make their place a more pleasant place to work.
Yeah.
I think just in general, as a sign of the consolidation of all media and everything into the hands of fewer and fewer people, I think that's just a kind of sign that we should keep our eye on, and I would say do something about, but we're fucked.
There's that cynical mind.
Uh-huh.
Like, I get what you're saying. I do. I don't know if it's all the way correct, but I get what you're saying. I do think consistent mergers are not necessarily like the best news. I
think it's just, not specifically like this one is maybe not the most apocalyptic, but just it is a part of a trend that seems to be accelerating in the wrong direction. Let's say that.
For me, I get what you're saying. The corporate consolidation is bad. I think, though, in isolation from the hashtag gamer world, I think in the long run that this particular transaction and merger will be a net positive. I think that, personally speaking, having the ABK banner under Microsoft, part of Game Pass, as a Game Pass subscriber, I'm selfishly excited about that and what that could entail. And I do think that the Activision Blizzard specific culture definitely needed a reset that wasn't going to come from anybody else, and hopefully that this gaming positive Microsoft and Xbox that has been a focus of theirs in the last years, and in a complete turnaround from where we saw Xbox a few years ago and where they are now, and putting the investment behind making things that gamers want and putting the investment into studios and whatnot, and saying, hey Phil, you are going to be the CEO of the Xbox division, in the long run will become a net positive, and saying, hey, these franchises that people have been clamoring for that have been let go for so long because shareholders just can't take a not 20 times return on investment, we will get to see that happening again. So I'm excited to see what happens from it. I will reserve judgment, though. If things go south, I will eat crow and say that I was wrong. And you know where you can hear me say that when I'm not wrong?
Where?
Unscriptedgaming.com. Right, don't look
Boy,
at me that way. Yeah, you love my transitions. I'm so
not
good
the
at that.
worst. 7 out of 10.
Hey, I'll take it. You know what, though? When you go to unscriptedgaming.com, 10 out of 10s all the way across the board. That's where you can find links to all of the shows, the things that we do across the internet. You can find us on Facebook at Unscripted Game Podcast, Twitter at unscript_gaming, soundcloud.com/unscripted-gaming, where you can find our audio versions. As Ray said, we are on all the podcatchers, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Apple, everywhere. Get us in your earballs, get us in your eyeballs. Thank you for listening to Unscripted Gaming. My name is Josh.
My name is Ray.
My name is Mike. What do you think would happen if we got bought out?
By who?
What if Microsoft bought us?
I'll listen. I could be.
How much do you think Microsoft would pay for us?
$2,500
Each, or do we have to split it?
I don't want to answer that.
Oh. Upsetting.
I would sell.
So long, folks.
The music stopped playing. I'm gonna have to cut it in.